Hi there, dear friends. Kalidas here to offer some astrological thoughts for the day. Today we're going to be speaking a bit about the process of loss, of death, and liberation, and how that relates to our individual horoscopes. In every chart there will show a past familiarity, and that will be the Ketu. In every chart it will show a future direction for the soul, and that will be Rahu. So when we come into a life, we can easily see in a horoscope where the familiarity has been, as well as where the future direction might be, the expansive direction for that individual. So what happens when we enter into this world of temporality, of very fleeting and fragile life existence? We enter into the possibility of loss and sorrow. That is, if we come into this world and say this world is mine to get the things that I want from, what's going to happen at death? We're going to lose it all. That is sorrow. If we have lived for the things of this world as our security, we will most certainly experience sorrow at their dissolution. So there's 3 houses in astrology that have to do with this process of us learning about the temporal, absolutely fragile and temporary existence that we find ourselves living in. It's scary at first, and most people don't want to face it, which makes the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house in astrology sometimes a very difficult place to have harder planets, because it shows a lack of understanding yet at the very fleeting nature of this world, and perhaps a grasping at it for security. So what happens when we lose a loved one? The reason I'm talking today on death and grief and loss and liberation is because we just found out that our cat of 9 years is dead, or perhaps gone. I'm not sure. We haven't found her body yet, but losing a cat is not a fun thing. It's a loss. It's a family member. We've had her for 9 years, since before our son was born. So it's a different type of day, and that's what spurred me to talk about loss and death, and the houses in the chart that have to do with our deeper liberation. It has to do with our losses, our liberations, and our losses. It's very interesting because that which we cling to weighs us down in this world. And when we let go of it, we feel lighter. So what I'm going to do is explain the 3 houses in the chart that have to do with this process of loss, sometimes of death, and then the ultimate intention of God's of helping us to become free through the loss. So the 12th house in India, they would call this the house of loss and sorrow. But it's also a moksha house, a liberating house. So when we come into this world and we gather up the things that we think are going to make us happy, like people and wealth and health and food storage and friends, and then we begin losing them later in life, well, that's going to be a really sorrowful experience. If we lived for that alone, yes, that will be very sorry. We will be very sorry. So be careful in what you invest your security in. That's what the 12th house is telling us. And people with planets in their 12th house will be better at feeling a bit detached from this world. That is because of their awareness of its temporal, fragile nature. So the question for a 12th house person, if there's malefics there, if there's a struggle, if they experience loss and sorrow regularly, the question is, what do you want to lose? What do you want to be free of? You want to lose sorrow, don't you? I know I do. And I don't want to lose my cat like I did today, and it brought some sorrow. So what do we want to lose? We want to lose attachment. We want to lose the expectation that this world is eternal, because it's not. And all this world crisis going on right now, which does pose a threat to our immediate securities, it's helping us become aware of where is our real security, isn't it? I think the world at large is growing deeply spiritually at this time, because we're being asked, where is your security when the material, superficial, temporary ones fall away? And that can be a very uncomfortable experience, which makes the Moksha houses, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th in the chart, very traumatic sometimes. That is, if there's resistance and attachment. In the 12th house, however, we can learn to lose ahead of time our very ego, our very sense of separation from God. The 12th house can make you into a channel for truth, and it can bring you to your salvation. So how did loss and sorrow become liberation and bliss for all eternity? It's a small trade-off. And the loss is something that's, for the yogi, we're expected to learn in this world, how to let go, how to release things back to God. I'll tell you a story with my own son who had some terrible seizures when he was 2 and 3 years old. It scared the life out of me. I was praying like I'd never prayed before for his life to be spared. And that is because we had made a child, my wife and I. I was desperately attached to him, and I still am. He's like the water in my glass or something. Like it's just he's so important to me. And so when he started to have seizures and have his life threatened, I started to really pray, like I said, like I never had before. And I said, Babaji, Divine Mother, God, Yogananda, spare his life. I will do anything to help this child. And that was the attitude that they were trying to get me to take, because to tell you the truth, previously, I had been taking the reins of parenthood with slightly resistant attitude, saying, oh boy, this is hard. This is a big sacrifice. This is tough on me. But as soon as the life of my child was threatened, I said, I'll do anything to keep him around. I'm here to help him grow. And as soon as I shifted my attitude to one of willingness to serve, an insight came. And that insight was, whose child was Japa 5 years ago? And remember, he was 2 at the time. And the answer had to be that Japa was God's child. And then the next question that came into my mind was, and whose child will this be in 100 years? And again, the answer is, this is God's child. And so I had to recognize, I am not the owner of my kid, nor am I the owner of my cat. And the 12th house will be willing, in a healthy state, to release things back to the divine who made them. In fact, I guarantee you, if my cat is dead, she's in a better place now. And I should be willing to send her there out of love for her enjoyment, for her freedom. And the same with human beings. When they depart from this world, as a culture, we've been trained to cling to them and spend all our money in the last 2 weeks of life trying to keep them alive against the will of the universe. When instead we could willingly give them back to their Creator, which when someone dies, they go into a beautiful place. That is, if they've lived for virtues, for good things, for service to others and friendship and love, go to a much higher place. So we should be willing to release our loved ones back to God. And that's the attitude that I believe God helped me to understand when my son had those seizures early on, was that this isn't mine, this isn't my child, I'm a custodian for him. Or he's in my custody, but he belongs to the Heavenly Father. Where else does he get his brilliant divine magic that he manifests every day? It's not from me. It's his father or his mother. It's from God. So each of us belongs in God and to God, the eternal. And each of us is eternal. And we make the mistake of thinking that this temporary form is me. So when we release the temporary forms who we've become attached to, it hurts if we haven't recognized their true status, which is that they never were ours in the beginning. Anything that we call ours, we will lose and we will be sorry. So why not call all gods? As it says in the autobiography of a yogi, the yogi learns to cultivate this divine love for God in everything, so that, how does it say? A love solitary because omnipresent. Meaning the yogi learns to love God alone in all life. God in my cat who's no longer on the planet, God in my child who God threatened to take away when I wasn't willing to embrace my duties as a father, through the seizure story I told you about. God in everything, this is what frees us. As Swami Kriyananda said, that the renunciation of Dwapara Yuga, which is the age of mankind that we're in at this time, he said this age is not world rejecting. That was the darker age. And there's still leftovers from it. Spirituality often looks like a world rejecting practice. It is not. Swamiji said that spirituality in the new age of Dwapara Yuga will be samadhi affirming, no longer world rejecting. Samadhi affirming. What does that mean? That means one with all, seeing God in everything. And Yogananda said that the yogi should cultivate throughout their life this sort of X-ray vision, which can see through the ordinary veil of matter and perceive the presence of God there, in whatever form it is. Even if it's in a political leader that you don't like, can you not see through that temporary veil to the presence of God within? If the answer is no, then that represents work for you. What about your own children? Are they yours? Do you see them as yours, part of your security? Because they belong to God. And this is the beautiful thing about parenthood, is you can link your love for your child, which is so unconditional and dedicated, to God by just simply refusing to separate the two. This is God. This is why mothers in India do so well with family, because they just see it as baby Krishna. There's no separation. God is here. I'm here to serve him, and there's no problem. Even though I don't have my own space, this is my sadhana, my spiritual work to take care of baby Krishna. So it's very beautiful how you can deepen your love for an object in God's creation without getting more attached to it. Rather, it deepens your love for God, a love solitary because omnipresent. And that would be the monasticism that we're being called to in Dwapara Yuga. Can we see and respect and love all as God? Even the hard stuff. Even when God takes loved ones out of our lives, like he took my kitty cat home. That cat's in a better place, and it was never mine to begin with. So that's the healthy attitude of the 12th house in astrology. That would be, what do we want to lose? We want to lose a false sense of attachment, falsely placed sense of security in temporary things. When we ourselves are eternal beings, we can't possibly receive security from a temporary thing. So why do we experience sorrow and grief? It's because we wish that things were still how they were. Like, since my kitty cat Louie is gone, the sorrow that I feel would be the wish to be with her again. And in a horoscope, that will be Ketu, the part that wishes for the past, a lower aspect of Ketu. Instead, it would be healthier to approach it with the Rahu, which would be looking forward to the future of my loved one and its new incarnation, which I may or may not know. But just embracing that God has a plan, he's got the future in his hands, and we shouldn't feel like just because we've lost a loved one, like I have today in my cat, that's bad for the loved one. It belongs to God, and he will take care of her. I'm sure of it. So then the 8th house. What is the 8th house? Another moksha house in which we can experience death, and then they add the words rebirth and transformation. And this is a very beautiful process, because death is like getting something in your life that you really don't want, and you have to accept it. Or it's being shown that something you're doing no longer can be done because it's not serving you, it's not serving others, and you have to let it go. In other words, you have to die to something. What is that something? It will be revealed by your life circumstance. What is it? Sometimes it's a willingness to stay at home for 2 months because of a virus that the TV tells us is everywhere and can get into anyone at any point. So stay home, or something like that. So what is the 8th house? It's agreeing to a situation that we would have normally resisted. That's the first step, is dying to our resistance, letting it go. And instead we embrace what is happening with faith that God's in charge and is much more intelligent than us, way wiser than us. And so what's going on the planet right now, we can't stop it. Can you stop it? I can't stop it. I tried to stop it. It didn't work. So what must be true then? That God's in charge and that there's a deeper vision to what's happening at this time. He's got something up his sleeve. He's going to change the world through this challenge. But we don't know how. We just have to cooperate. So death and rebirth. The rebirth is the part where you begin to trust that there's a purpose to this challenge. There's a purpose to this block, this obstacle that once seemed like a hellish manifestation of God's lack of love for me. I'm learning to trust that this is God's love for me, that this challenge, this hardship, this loss, this sorrow is from love. And I'm going to go forward in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good, God's presence everywhere, to bring to me what I need at the time I need it. And if what's coming is coming, that must be what I need. It might not be what I want. I didn't wake up this morning wanting my cat to be brought into the astral world, but that happened. So it must be what she needed and what I needed at this time, and thus we're being reborn into a new viewpoint. Now we can begin the really fun part, which is the transformation of the 8th house in astrology. We call it death, rebirth, and now transformation. And that transformation is, I don't know what to do, God. I don't know how to embrace this. I don't know how to move forward with the challenge. Let's take mine today, for instance, my kitty cat. I don't know how to express the emotion that I feel of loss of my cat. I don't know how to cry about it right now. I'm just kind of feeling blocked emotionally. Well, that's normal in this 8th house process. To have the death and the rebirth process is kind of becoming willing to go through it. But we still don't know how. We still have to ask to be an instrument. So my wife and my child, they both lost their cat this morning too. So the right attitude would be to pray, Lord, make me an instrument so that I can be strong and compassionate and hold the family together amidst this loss. Make me your instrument, because it's a mark of us saying, Lord, I don't know how to do this, but I know that you know everything. And God, I don't think I have the strength to deal with what you're giving me, but I know that your strength is infinite and that you live in me so that you can do this through me. Well, I live in a community called Ananda Village. It's very beautiful, full of yogis and kind-hearted, beautiful people. 250 of them. And this place was built with that very attitude. God, I know that you want community to be built and hold devotees of truth together and support, but I don't know how. And that was Swami's first step. Guruji told me to, but I don't know how. So, Lord, you must guide me. Or to put it simpler, God, I can't do this, but you can do anything through me. So please use me as your instrument. This is the transforming part of the 8th house. And it can happen through the death of a loved one. If you lose someone and you begin to accept that they've gone to a better place, you can pray to be an instrument for understanding for others who were affected emotionally by the death and the loss. What the masters guarantee us, and what you can take heart in if you lose a loved one or have lost a loved one recently, is that we will see and know again and embrace and merge in God's love with everyone we've ever loved. There's an invisible cord that ties us to everyone we've ever loved. And so when a loved one of ours enters the astral world and we say goodbye to them, they go home to a place where they see everyone they've ever loved. It's a beautiful reunion, and there's no sense of jealousy or I love that one more than that one. It's just a pure love for God's presence in all life. A love solitary because omnipresent is what the autobiography of a yogi says. And if each of us could learn how to love only God in all his manifestations, as Swamiji says, samadhi affirming, not world rejecting, not people rejecting, not separate consciousness, I'm holy and you're not, which is one thing that catches a lot of really dedicated spiritual people is they think they're better than the rest of God's creation. But what about seeing God enshrined in all life? That's what frees us to enjoy this creation without attachment. Because just because my cat's gone, it disappeared this morning. If you haven't been watching, I told the story earlier. But I can still love another cat. God's presence is still here. So I don't have to grieve as hopelessly. There's 1 million cats in this world, and God's presence is everywhere. So if we can develop a healthy 4th house, which is the last Moksha house, it has to do with home, mother, and family. And I'm going to make this short because I've only got 5% battery. The home is learning to make inward consciousness and here your home. It's not saying that some particular place on earth is home, because that could burn, again, temporary. But your eternal home is here. Mother, where is Mother? She's a source of great comfort for the children. But once you grow up, Mother goes on and moves on to other cycles, and you don't have her all the time, her great comforting presence. So where is Mom? God within, God without, seeing God everywhere and seeing everything coming from the Mother. And then lastly would be family is part of that 4th house, the first Moksha house. And family would be reestablishing wider and wider boundaries to embrace all as our brothers and sisters. And to apply the love we've learned in our own home with our own family members to God's creation. To love all with the love that we feel for our own family will ultimately also liberate us. So that's today's discussion on the liberating houses, the houses that tend to cause death and grief and loss, and how we can use them for our ultimate liberation, which is the whole intention behind God's creation. Master Yogananda said that God made creation for our education and entertainment. Are you being educated and entertained? It's a sign that you're in tune with God. If you're not being educated, there may be some lesson that you're ignoring, choosing to live in ignorance. If you're not entertained, it might be because you're a little bit too seriously attached to the way things should look, and they don't. So keep those things in mind. Thank you for tuning in today. It's a little bit shorter today because of my battery amount, but you can find these talks on YouTube at Astrology with Kalidas. It's all one word. And you will also be able to access those recordings there without any breaks in the sound. I've heard some comments about sound breaks here on Facebook Live, but you won't find those sound breaks on the YouTube page. So in case there's breaks in the sound, go to the YouTube. You'll watch it without distortion. So it was fun to share today, and God bless you all in this beautiful journey towards liberation. Jai Guru.